Hello everyone, my name is Despina Parpas and I'm a freelance architect and researcher. Today's presentation is titled Adaptive Reuse of Abandoned Buildings, a Sustainable Driven Approach for Successful Recoveries, and it is twofold. Firstly, it discusses the practice of adaptive reuse and its connection to sustainable development, and secondly, within this framework, and when it comes to repurposing abandoned or derelict buildings, some realized empirical projects, analyses and evaluation systems for successful urban recoveries are brought into the discussion. Sustainability is a multidisciplinary process and it is connected to the realms of socio-economics, culture and the environment. These vital contributions are successful proponents of both the practice of adaptive reuse and sustainability-driven developments of the built environment, especially sites of high cultural heritage value. So, could heritage itself participate as a criterion in empirical testing in order to establish whether certain soft values hold a prominent role in achieving successful adaptations? And this is where the examination of the empirical projects connecting adaptive reuse with sustainability comes in. But we will be coming back to this later on. Adaptive reuse, semiotically, means to reuse in order to fit. But to fit what? The needs of contemporary lifestyle, the new use, the climate, or context. It is described as developing the potential of additional use and wear for functionally obsolete buildings. It is essentially the recycling of a building. Most of the time, a new use is introduced to the existing shell, sometimes requiring restoration, upgrading, or repairing works. Some adapted units are indeed recycled, accommodating new uses existing in the inherited built fabric. Also, adaptive reuse concerns both highly important buildings historically and at the same time ordinary buildings, which is an important aspect of the practice. However, not all buildings are good candidates for adaptation, as their configuration and physical condition do not allow viable solutions. Briefly, adaptive reuse is beneficial as it connects the new version of the building to its original character and the embedded narrative. Therefore, the sense of place can be retained, and certain values are conserved, such as social, cultural, historical. Relevant links to the past and significant memories are kept, and historical or cultural landmarks are safe-kept. Core social values such as pride and memory can be enhanced by careful consideration of adaptive reuse strategies, which highlights that adaptive reuse contributes to maintaining the character and the vitality of the built fabric. Adaptive reuse preserves regional flavor while minimizing impacts on the environment. Also, recycling participates in having an attitude towards more viable paths when it comes to materials. So, the notion of futurity, which also exists in the notion of sustainability, is a crucial element in defining a successful reuse. If a unit continues to exist and operate within the built fabric, its life and usefulness are extended, which is considered to be a successful proponent of adaptive reuse. Futurity holds a key role when thinking the practice of adaptive reuse as a medium for sustainable recoveries. Therefore, adaptive reuse is indeed a sustainable practice. The continued life cycle of a building is ensured as the building of interest is prevented from destruction. Fundamentally, adaptive reuse is a method of extending the useful life of buildings by a combination of improvement and conversion. But this process is not always successful. There are adaptively reused buildings standing next to each other, and yet not all are successful recoveries. Around us, in our built environment, we can witness this. So how can this success be measured? There are realized projects based on empirical research concerning multi-criteria analysis, and these are used as a vehicle to draw conclusions on which criteria, tangible or intangible, are most important in successful recoveries. More specifically, some researchers have used rating systems, indexes, cost-benefit analysis, Some others, including myself, have used multiple recreation models with several different criteria acting as independent variables, aiming to investigate the statistical significance of certain determinants of a sustainable led development or adaptive reuse. Such analysis, although including different criteria from the prongs of sustainability, and although taking into consideration all important elements constituting a viable adaptation, do not target and do not expect equal contributions from each. Concerning the criteria that participate in empirical research projects, good candidates could be its scale, its context, its viability, its cohesiveness with the community, its historical and aesthetic value, and the use of certain materials and construction techniques. It is obvious here that some criteria are tangible and some others are not. Finally, an intangible aspect is heritage. Maintaining our cultural uniqueness or identity contributes to sustaining systems of tradition and keeping the individual or collective memory alive. Everything that is built carries a story with it. Preventing historical buildings from becoming derelict and protecting them so that they can be passed on to the fans, but also it reestablishes their significance in a sentimental, not measurable way. Some peers talk about how development can only be sustainable if historic preservation is part of it. The adaptive reuse of the historic fabric can promote a community's gainful participation in economic globalization. But which heritage assets are more valuable and thus more important to adaptively reuse in the name of sustainability? What did these researchers reveal concerning these values among all the other parameters? Adaptive reuse is indeed of a sustainable nature and it incorporates important aspects of sustainability. Yet these empirical projects show that economics is not the main driving force when it comes to successful reuse or sustainable redevelopment. Surprisingly, the expectation that the cost of adaptation could be the most important contributor to successful reuse because high cost could indicate works of a better quality was overturned. Of course, cost is a good indicator, but this is irrelevant if not seen in relation to the unit size or state of obsolescence. However, these scenarios were also tested and overturned again. Another important criterion that was examined was location, and the findings are interestingly contrasting. The locational aspect is proven statistically significant in some projects, where in some others not only is of minor statistical significance, but could be omitted from the models entirely. Now concerning utilitarian matters, the original materiality of an old traditional shell usually reflects a more sustainable nature because it features vernacular techniques and it is indigenous. Arguably, contemporary materials have an advantage over the traditional materials and techniques as they provide more possibilities, especially when it comes to adaptations of much older units. Same with non-organic materials. Organic materials have also mechanical or technical drawbacks, even though they are greener in a way with a minimized ecological footprint. Nonetheless, the findings reveal that the original material does not hold a significant role at all with regards to expansion of its lifespan. By the same token, some peers do not see potential sustainable effects from their use of concrete buildings dating back from the modern era, with the most frequent argument being that the material has poor behavior related to ecological, biochromatic, or mechanical aspects. There is this misperception that the reuse of buildings made of concrete cannot represent beneficial effects towards a more viable future. However, it is argued there is more to be found in the reuse of concrete buildings concerning social, historical, and cultural matters. To conclude, adaptively reused buildings have proven to be efficient in accommodating a new use and effective in terms of the upgrading process. For this reason, it is important to study each case study individually, and not all buildings are compatible with the introduced uses. Following this mode of thinking with regard to the cost-benefit analysis, no general rules apply when comparing new constructions versus reusing the old ones. Adaptive reuse is case-sensitive, and stakeholders should take into consideration all possibilities, technical, economic, and environmental, before proceeding to conduct a strategy for adaptively reusing a building. It is problematic that some investors focus on the socio-economic values of the rehabilitation rather than some other, sometimes intangible aspects that could contribute more holistically to sustainable development and successful recoveries. Fundamentally, the general picture should be taken into consideration when assessing the potential reuse of a building or a complex. The prior materials should not be seen as a barrier, neither should some materials or whole structures be overlooked because their original status is not green enough, if other aspects of sustainability are dealt with and met. For this reason, interdisciplinary approaches involving stakeholders from different backgrounds are important, as the weighting of the parameters of the assessment of each case study requires serious work. It is widely accepted that adaptive reuse helps to revitalize the cities, benefits neglected neighborhoods, and incorporates innovative thinking towards sustainable development. There is the belief that adaptive reuse holds multi-phase benefits, socio-economic and environmental, and that beneficial revenues are created. They also believe that preserving the built environment leads to a more sustainable future, and that the community regains the sense of a place. Through the adaptive reuse of existing units, traditional techniques, materials, and methods are embraced, although monitoring and constant evaluation are crucial to this process. As far as the architectural expression is concerned, and the question of which heritage should be reused towards sustainable development, some key components have been examined in the before-mentioned project, such as the building's materiality, size, location, and the building's design era. This type of criteria can be taken into consideration to determine whether heritage itself holds a prominent role in urban recoveries, expanding the built fabric's life. It was revealed that heritage was indeed a valuable component in successful adaptations, which is a relief because if only economic matters were important, this would be limiting, and this was shown through statistics, which is solid. Thank you. There's my email. If you have any questions or want to discuss anything, please feel free to contact me.